Are you ready?
Let's go.
Now circling in the neutral zone.
Here's the pitch on the way. 36 yards for the win.
This.
Here comes a big chance. The shot.
Is
this the dagger?
The neutral zone.
Home run. Good.
This is as good as it gets.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca.
Now, here's your host, two-time Paralympian, Brock Richardson.
What's going on? It's time for another edition of The Neutral Zone. I am indeed your host, Brock Richardson. We are pleased to be joined by friend of the show and recent award winner, Devin Heroux, to wrap up the Paralympic Games. We also are going to discuss what is next for Devin in particular now that the Paralympics and Olympics are over. I suspect it's going to be a lot of curling in his world coming up very soon. Plus, we're going to be discussing Vince Carter getting his number retired and lifted to the rafters by the Toronto Raptors. Try to say that 5 times fast. I challenge
Nicely
you.
done, sir.
I almost tripped over my tongue on that one, but got through it. And we discuss whether or not this is deserving. All that and much, much more on this, what promises to be a bit of an extended version of The Neutral Zone. I'm joined by Josh Watson and Cam Jenkins. Here comes your headlines.
Neutral Zone headlines.
The Ontario Para Network is actively seeking enthusiastic community members to join our organizing committee. If you have experience in hospitality, sponsorship, or marketing, we would love to hear from you. Your skills and insights could play a vital role in shaping our events and initiatives, helping us create meaningful experiences for everyone involved. If you're interested in learning more about this opportunity and how you can contribute, please reach out to Tammy at onpara.ca. We look forward to connecting with you.
Ontario Cycling, in collaboration with the Ontario Para Network, is looking for para athletes who are interested in high-performance paracycling training to join us for our Para Triad event on Saturday, November 23rd. If you are interested in more information, it can be found at ontariocycling.org/para-try-it-event. We look forward to seeing you at the event.
Talk about well done on the tongue twister there. Well done to both of you on those headlines. And to close out the headlines, I'm here to tell you Christine Sinclair, Canada's Mrs. Soccer, how about that, has decided to announce her retirement from professional football at the end of this 2024 season. She will be celebrated and honored in Portland's final regular season game, which takes place on Sunday, November 1st. There's something that tells me this game will be on national television, international television. I know we talked about her retiring from Canada Soccer a while ago. She has now decided she's done with professional soccer as well. What a wonderful career it was, and I look forward to watching her on November the 1st, as she's probably going to get the flowers she deserves, both figuratively and probably physically as well. So congratulations to Christine on a wonderful professional career. Those are your headlines for this week. If you want to get a hold of us on social media, here's how you can do that.
And welcome back to the Neutral Zone broadcast booth.
Play ball!
We're set to get this bowl game underway. The first pitch is brought to you by Brock Richardson's X account at Neutral Zone BR.
Strike!
Pitch and a strike. Hey gang, why not strike up a chat with Claire Buchanan from the Neutral Zone? Find her on X at Neutral Zone CB. There's a swing of the chopper out to second base, right at Claire as she picks up the ball, throws it over to the first base for a routine play.
Out!
And fans, there's nothing routine about connecting with Cam and Josh from the Neutral Zone at Neutral Zone Cam J and at J Watson 200. And the Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.
we are pleased to be joined by our friend of this program and recent award winner, Devin Heroux. Devin, welcome back to the show, and I'm going to sabotage the first question because we were talking about this a little bit. Do broadcasters suffer from Olympic and Paralympic blues? Yes, no, why or why not?
Absolutely. And wonderful to see all of you. Yeah, I'm having a really hard time adjusting to life outside of Stade de France and La Défense Arena because, of course, those two venues in particular were basically my homes for 2 months. And now, despite the fact that, and I don't think people can see this right now, but I'm surrounded by my effervescent foliage in my house, it's cold comfort for where I'd rather be, and that is surrounded by baguettes and cheese and screaming fans, and of course, spectacular athletes. So I will be honest, I will only ever be honest with you guys. I miss it, and I can only imagine that the athletes feel it on a completely different way than what a broadcaster does. But it's the biggest thing, and you have purpose, and there's a rush of adrenaline, and as tired as you are, you show up at the venue and somebody does something extraordinary, and then it's midnight and you're still talking about it. And then you're up at 5 a.m. and you're still talking about it, and you just keep going, right? And so I've been tired, and I'm like, why am I tired? I'm not doing anything. And it's because I don't have the adrenaline of just pure, beautiful sport. So that's my long answer to a simple question.
So, Devin, we are so honored that you won an award, which is the King Charles III Coronation Medal for your top quality, enthusiastic, and empathetic sports coverage. Can you tell us how you found out? And did you hear from the King himself? And what does the award mean to you?
Well, thank you, first of all. And it's a very awkward thing to be talking about yourself when what you do for a living is talking about others. So let me start by saying that. And it's funny because I actually went with my partner to London for a couple of days immediately after the Olympics. And at that point, we had known, and nobody else in the world had. So we had a bit of a chuckle when we were at Buckingham Palace because I was waving at the King and thought maybe I'll just pick up my medal there during the changing of the guard. Yeah. Right. And the band actually played a Spice Girls song, which was lovely. I'm like, did you do that for me? Because I love it, and I'm dancing. Spice up your life. Listen, I'll tell you the story. I haven't told it publicly. I've told it to some people. It was about a week before I was getting ready to go to Paris. I got an email that said something to the effect of King's Coronation Medal. And I was preparing for one of our final meetings with our lead researcher. And we were going to go day by day on when Canada could potentially win a medal. So my mind, obviously, at that point was elsewhere entirely. And I got this email, and I quickly scanned it, and quite honestly, I thought it was spam. And I thought it was that they wanted me to interview somebody who had won this thing. So I skimmed it, and then I went into the boardroom, and I went, Marc LeBlanc's the researcher. I said, can I read this out loud? And are you hearing what I'm reading? that they want to award me for this. And he said, I think that's exactly what it says. Of course, I'm skeptical by nature. So I phoned the phone number at the bottom of the email, and I said, listen, I'm skeptical by nature. This says that I'm supposed to win this. I have no idea what it is. I don't know what I did. And I think I'm being scammed. And you know, God bless Tracy, the organizer, and a wonderful woman who I got to meet at the Governor General's residence in Quebec City. She said, "What's your name?" I said, "Devin Heroux." She said, "No, you've actually won." I said, "What did I win? And how did what is this?" And she told me that it was one of the Governor General's medals to award, hand selected. For me, what's beautiful, and there's a couple of things that are beautiful, and I'll deflect because this is a celebration of everybody, quite honestly, and I love that the way I do my work is being acknowledged because I think we can do this differently. And, I'm so grateful for the athletes. I'm grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for the people I work with that can understand that it can be a different way. And I think what we saw this summer is that the athletes like that way better, that they can be more of themselves. And so to me, that's what this represents. But it's a really fascinating thing to wrap your head around. And the Governor General picked me to win this medal. And what I will say is I don't often stop to be proud, because what have you done for me lately and what are we doing next? But I'm really proud of this, and it was really emotional for me to be in the Citadel in the Governor General's residence wearing a medal, listening to the anthem, because how many times have I reported on athletes getting a medal and listening to their anthem? And so it was kind of a beautiful full circle moment for me. And I was in a room full of people who are changing hearts and minds and saving lives. And I got to be a part of that. And I'm grateful. And I'll stop right there. But it's been quite the journey for sure.
Well, I think it's safe for me to say on behalf of the three of us in this room that you are very deserving, and I understand what it's like to want to deflect praise, because we are part of teams and it takes a lot of people to do what we do, but we do here believe that you are very, very deserving of this. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
We
Let's talk about the athletes.
I was going to say, we will switch gears. Let's talk about some of the highlights, if we can, beginning with the sitting volleyball team winning their first ever bronze medal. What do you make of that, and how do you see them after this Paralympics?
Josh, when you do a few of these, you start to get favorites, despite the fact that we're not supposed to have favorites. And the women's sitting volleyball team has become a favorite of mine, right? Because I really got to know them. And this is the beauty of story, right? When you hear stories, when you understand journeys, you're like, yes, I'm cheering for you. I want you to succeed. And they were devastated in Tokyo when they lost that bronze medal game to the Brazilians. And let's be honest, the Brazilians have been their kryptonite for years. And then, of course, it felt like there was going to be this collision course that they would need in the bronze medal game. And that's exactly what ended up playing out. And, I've followed a lot of them individually on their social media. And what struck me is just really how much they love each other. They love each other as teammates, but as human beings outside of the sport. And I just got the sense that this was a team that was ready to meet the moment, that was 3 years in the making from that loss in Tokyo. And 9 of the 12 players on that team were returning from Tokyo. So you can imagine that they really were on this journey. And what an emphatic, kick-ass victory it was over the Brazilians in that bronze medal game. They really, truly left nothing to doubt. What was most impressive to me about that victory, among myriad of things, was, and if you were watching, and I'm sure all of you were, there was a moment in the third set where the Brazilians started to push back. And it really felt like, this might be the start of where this match turns around. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, we're going to learn a lot about this team right now, because you really got the sense that if they didn't end it in the third set, all those sort of demons and voices of doubt in the back of their minds would have started to creep in. How many times have we seen it in sport, especially when it can go 5 sets? We see it all the time in tennis, where it just swings and then all of a sudden you're in this heated 5th set and you're like, how did this happen? And I'm sitting there going, don't let this happen. And they didn't. The Brazilians, I think, got up a couple of points, and then it was like not today. And they all looked at each other on the court, and it was like shutdown city. And when they won it, and it was sort of this weird moment because I think the Brazilians were serving and there was an error and you could barely see the error because the ball wasn't going over the net and one of the players tipped it over, and then it was over. And the players were in disbelief and the families were celebrating, and it was emotional. And what I love about people like Alison Lang is they're such great advocates. They're the perfect people for the Paralympic movement. So the fact that they have a medal, and it's not always about the medal, but the medal changes being in publications and being on radio shows and being on television. Alison Lang was just on Global Morning Show this past weekend. They have a piece of metal and a literal piece of the Eiffel Tower to take into classrooms and to take into newsrooms and to talk about all of this. And that's what I love about this victory for them more than anything. So it was a wonderful, wonderful victory. They have a bronze medal, and I think it's only going to make them hungrier. And I also think it's going to grow the program. So congratulations to Coach Nicole Ban, everyone from, Heidi Peters to Alison Lang to everybody in between. It was a complete team effort, and I'm so thrilled for them.
So, Devin, let's jump into the pool now, and let's get your thoughts on how they did, because they were just shy of double digits. And obviously, I think you would think it's a success, but let's hear your thoughts on what happened in the pool.
We're talking about the Paralympics?
Yeah. Paralympics.
Okay, yeah. Perfect.
Sorry.
Was it short of double digits? Was it 9 total?
Yeah, I think it was 9 at the end of it.
Okay. I didn't add it up, but I thought they had gotten to double digits. I could be wrong. It's all a blur. Whatever the case, listen, the people who were great and who we thought were going to be great, I think did their thing. I think about Orly Rivard, who's been good for so long. And of course, she becomes the first Canadian swimmer since, I believe, Steph Dixon to follow up 3 consecutive Paralympic golds in the same distance, which is remarkable. And I actually had a chat with Steph Dixon, the great Steph Dixon, recently. And she talked about how hard it is to do that. Like, guys, back to back to back. That is greatness over a long period of time. But what was interesting to me about all of that is Orly was so vulnerable about the fact that she almost went home. Like it was not going well for her, and she was beat by the French swimmer, and that was a beautiful moment. But I think she was so stunned by that. And talk about pivoting, right? And what was it? The 400 meter? I think it was a 400 meter free that she won the gold. And you're watching that, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, she might be in a battle for bronze here, right? Like. She's in it, and I'm going, oh, Lord, I don't know if this is going to be what Orly wants. And then, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, here comes Rivard, and I get goosebumps thinking about what she did there. I mean, I'm talking a lot about Orly. She's wonderful. But what a showing by Nicholas Bennett. And his emotion listening to the anthem after his gold medals, beautiful. Him and his sister, he's always talked about his sister being his coach, and that it is a journey with the two of them, and that without her, he's nothing. They train in Red Deer, Alberta, which I know well. I have family there. So, I'm so glad that Nicholas was able to rise to the occasion. Generally, across the program, do we feel maybe we fell a little bit short? Yeah, but it felt like maybe some of these younger swimmers maybe learned a lot in this experience, which of course, when you get on the international stage is a big thing. I mean, I'll tell you what, guys, walking into La Défense Arena and being in front of that roaring crowd. And what was interesting is, I was in the mixed zone there for the Olympics and then for the Paralympics, but they moved our location for easier accessibility for the athletes. So I was right down on the pool deck, Like, talk about being in the belly of the beast. I was nervous asking my questions in front of all of those people. I can't imagine what it would have been like for some of those rookies, but not even rookies. Like, let's think about some of these second game swimmers who didn't have a crowd in Tokyo. So it was a completely different experience to go into a Paralympics, but then sort of go into an empty stadium and kind of be like, okay, this is like any other meet. Suddenly, there's 12,000 people roaring, and that's enough to shake even the most veteran swimmers. So I think there were a lot of good learning lessons. Sebastian Masabi, I think, is going to be a great swimmer for a long time, and so I think some of our veterans showed the way. But I think it was, I would say, generally for the swimming program, this was one of those games that was more about experience, feeling the rush, because you better be ready to meet the noise and match the music in LA, because it's going to be as raucous, if not more. And so they'll go back and they'll look at that, because, your body does strange things when you get nervous, and you've got to just block all of that out and be able to compete. So there were great moments, and I think there could have been more, quite honestly.
Talking a little bit about what I think we can safely call your second home in Paris, the track and Stade de France. I'm wondering, can we talk a little bit about that? And in particular, watching Brent Lakatos winning his 13th Paralympic medal. What do you make of his games? And do you think, is that his last? Is he finally going to retire?
Well, he's been saying he's going to retire since 2008. I think I told you guys that. And so, it's funny because he's been saying that since 2008. And then it was put to him at these games. And for the first time ever, he said, I don't know if I'm going to retire. So he says it all these times. And now he's like, well, I don't know. I guess I got to keep going. I think we'll see Brent in LA. Like, just talking to you guys in this moment, I think we're going to see Brent in LA. Let's not forget, the guy had an injury. His ribs were busted and banged up, and he still found a way to win another gold medal. And I think Orly and Brent both won their 13th medals on the same night, which I think there was some beautiful. I think they both won silver medals, or maybe it was their 12th. I think they both won their 12th on the same night. They were both silver medals. So I loved that parallel situation, but. You know what was really beautiful for me is it felt like Brent was a little grumpy in Tokyo. He was joyful. He was really joyful in Paris, and it seemed like something happened for him. And that's all I want for any athlete, especially an athlete like him, who's a champion in every sense, who's been competing as long as he has. Might have been due to the fact that his wife was part of our CBC broadcast team. And Steph was a powerhouse. Like, let me just say, Steph Reed was brilliant on the broadcast. I could listen to her. She said something in the opening ceremony that will stick with me for as long as I live. She made the point, she said, talking about all these great athletes and the power of the Paralympic movement and parasport. And she said, and you know what is most remarkable about all of this is there are still able-bodied people out there who haven't had their accident who will be competing in LA.
Wow.
Like, let that wash over you for a second. It took my breath away when I heard it. I was part of the broadcast, and I just went, please, dear God, don't come to me, because I really am not composed enough after that. It was the most poignant thing I've heard in a really long time. I just wanted to get that in there because I thought it was worth repeating. So Steph was brilliant, but
yeah, we did talk about that on the show, actually, of that comment that she made. And yeah, we had a discussion on that as to whether or not people, if they were injured right now, would they be able to compete at the 2028 LA Games or not? So yeah, that's interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah, it really was jarring to me, but of course you would have seen the footage of her trying to remain as objective as possible.
You can't when it's your husband, for God's sakes.
No. was thinking about if I was calling a partner's race, and I just thought, oh my God, I would have done exactly what she would have done. In fact, I probably would have jumped out of the chair. She was contorting in the chair, and then so what a special moment for them. But I think Brent, medals aside, to see him beaming and to see him happy was what was awesome for me, for him. So let's see him in LA.
Why not?
For me, as I was watching the Paralympic Games, I mean, I can't help but, go to my old stomping grounds of bocce. And I think going into the games, Devin, I think for me, I looked and thought, hey, there's probably, 2, possibly 3 medal opportunities at these games. And then they went away with not a lot and nothing, to be precise. Was this a disappointment, or am I just looking at this with rose-colored glasses because it's my old stomping grounds and I would expect better things?
And I would want to ask you about it. Quite honestly, I would want to be the journalist, because I didn't get there, and I don't love that I didn't get there, because I care deeply about Alison Levine and the team, right? But I was watching, and it just felt, in curling we have the saying, you're on the wrong side of the inch, when you just can't. Everything that could go wrong goes wrong. And Brock, you would be much more better suited to talk about this than me. So just interrupt me if I'm making complete garbage out of all of this. But when I watched, it felt like they were literally just on the wrong side of the inch. Like, it felt like Alison Levine just could not buy a break. And I really thought she was poised and ready. And her career has been remarkable. We have a lot of veterans on that team. And I just thought, here's a moment. And I really felt like these were going to be the games. And every conversation I had with them ahead of it led me to believe that they were ready to meet the moment. And it never materialized. So I think it is a disappointment. I think I read some of what Alison posted the other day about sort of digesting her experience at the game, and that she probably will be thinking about that for a long time. I mean, there are probably games and matches that you ruminate, and shots that you wish you could have back for the rest of your life, But I recall watching some of the games and just going, how did that happen? It can be such a frustrating game. But Brock, I would love your analysis on it, because you're far more suited to speak to it than I am.
I think for me, I mean, Alison really got screwed when she had one loss and had to take on the number 1 lady in the world, and who has the best name in bocce of all time, Lady Chica Chica. And she was literally on the wrong side of the inch. Like, last ball, last end, like, it was a miraculous shot that she made. And the image that will stand in my mind, and I'll tell you why, for 2 reasons. The image that will stand in my mind is at the end of the pairs competition, she was being interviewed by one of your colleagues, and she leaned on her partner's chest and said, yeah, I know, I understand, the sun will rise, I get all that, but it hurts right now. And then your colleague, who hurt us all in his last broadcast, Scott Russell, in the closing ceremonies, he presented that very same thing about the image that stands in his mind is that very same thing, and it's about friends and teammates and all that jazz. And so for me, I think she will come out from this. I think, Devin, and I'd like to get your thoughts as well. I think, Devin, for me, what the surprise was those guys had won, 4 events prior to the Paralympic Games. So everyone's like, this is it. And then to be on the wrong side of the inch, you're just like, or not. Never mind. Move on, right? Yeah.
No, and that's the magic of the games, right? But it's also the heartbreak of the games. Is like, I think about Nate Reich, who of course thought he was going to win gold. And I'm watching that race, or in bocce, or when you think back to the Olympics, Damian Warner not being able to get over the bar. I mean, on the day, winning every event leading up to that moment means nothing. And suddenly you look around and you go, I'm running out of time. And that can get away from you in a hurry. And so it's the champions who, in the middle of a race, in the middle of a match, in the middle of a competition, who can find a way to reel it back in. And I think, to me, that's the more impressive thing, and why when you have repeat champions and people who can do it time and time and time again, I just think there's a moment in the competition where it is probably going sideways, and yet they find a way to reel it back in. So for that team, this is it. You're going in, you have all the confidence, and then real life happens. And then what? And if you can't pivot in real time and can't find a way, despite the fact that you told yourself a story that, wait a second, this isn't the way this is supposed to go. None of that matters. Right here, right now, what's in front of me. And again, I'm talking about Nate Reich, and I think about that race, and I think he was stunned. I really think he was stunned at the end of that. And he won a silver medal, and he should be so thrilled with that. But I really felt like he thought he should win gold. I think everybody thought he should win gold. And then all of a sudden he's fighting for his life to get on the podium. And that's sport. That's sport. That's how quickly it can all change. So I hope Allison doesn't lose too much sleep over it, because that is the truth. The sun does come up, and here's the other thing, there's going to be another competition down the road. You might think about that forever, but you also have to find a way to reimagine success. And I have no doubt Allison will wear her lucky red shoes, and she will be back on the podium doing what she does best. But yeah, I think from a bocce perspective, it was disappointing for sure. So Brock, I think your read on that was bang on. You're the expert.
So looking at the women's goalball program, I really thought that they had medal aspirations, and unfortunately they fell a bit short. What do you think about the goalball program and what transpired over there in Paris?
It's disappointing. I really do. It's still one of the great moments of my career that I was with them when they defeated the Americans to win Pan Am gold. And it just felt like some of the blockages and some of the reasons why they couldn't win a big game of the past, I felt like they exercised those demons in Santiago. I think they believed that as well. And to your point, Brock, I think that this was a team that really felt like this is their moment. That all roads were leading to Paris, and that they were ready. And then it was a quarterfinal against Israel, if I'm not mistaken. And what was the final? Was it 5-1?
Yeah,
something like that. They just. I was at Canada House that day, or Canada Paralympic House, interviewing Kate O'Brien, who won the first medal for Canada in paracycling. And I was with her, and I kept looking. I should have been more present for the interview, quite honestly, but I was watching the goalball game. And I looked up, and all of a sudden it was 3-0 early. And I actually couldn't believe it. I was in disbelief, and I'm sure the team was in disbelief as well. And I was actually messaging with Amy Burke last week, and I owe her a phone call, because I didn't get there either, because I was running every which direction, and I felt horrible that I didn't get to the venue, because I'm so proud of that team. And again, I just really felt like this was their moment. So yeah, I can't put a finger on it why that happened, because it just felt like they were ready. And it's the beauty and the painful part of sport. The quarterfinal is sucks though to lose, because you're not in, like, you get to the semi, you at least get to go back out there and you get to fight for a medal. But like the quarterfinal, it's just over. Like it's done. And that's a tough one. So I'll be talking to Amy. They're still champions. They've still done beautiful things for the program. I love the swagger they have. I love that they're just bold and loud and un-Canadian, and I just love it. And I wish it would have gone differently for them, for sure, because a lot of people were following that gold ball journey, and I know they wanted to take it right to the end. So yeah, they'll be thinking about that for a while.
Absolutely. We'd be remiss if we didn't ask you a bit about the men's and women's wheelchair basketball programs. Unfortunately, neither team medaled in this Paralympics. Who, in your mind, was the bigger disappointment? Do you think it was the men or the women?
Guys, we're kind of Debbie Downers here right now.
We're talking about all these, and yet we won 29 medals, and it's the most Canada's ever won.
I know. I mean, Josh, I hate when people don't answer my question, so I'll answer your question, and then I'll give you a more fulsome answer. I think the men's team not winning bronze was more disappointing. And the reason for that is because I really wish Pat Anderson would have went out with a medal. And quite honestly, they should have. They were in position to do so. They had the lead going into the fourth quarter, and then they completely fell apart. I'm not mincing words here, but it was a catastrophic finish to that game. I don't know how badly they were outscored, but it wasn't even close, and it was just sad. Like it really was. It was sad. There's no two ways about it. Yeah, so I was heartbroken for them, and I thought it was a really disappointing. I felt like the program had made such huge leaps and bounds forward throughout the tournament, having to fight and claw their way to the Paralympics, and then they found some magic, right? And they looked like a team, and they were making clutch shots, and they were moving the ball. And it was just like, okay, we know they're not going to beat the powerhouses, but a bronze medal was their gold medal. And it felt like it was there, and they let it get away from them. And I just wish that Pat could have guided them to a bronze medal as a sort of ceremonial passing of the torch to say, here's what it's like to win a medal. I've only known what it was like to win a medal in my first how many appearances. Now you guys are back there, and go forth, young men. And that never happened. For the women, I mean, listen, the bronze medal game was a disaster. I wish I would have slept in, because it felt like they slept in and didn't show up for it on that closing Sunday in Paris. I could have had more coffee, but we showed up to Bercy Arena early, and you got the sense in the warm-ups that they still hadn't gotten over the semifinal loss. Katie Dandino gave one of the all-time interviews to me after they got robbed by the referees in the fourth quarter, which I think changed the complexion of that game. I mean, they were right with the Dutch in that semifinal, and I thought they could have won that game. I really do. But they got done in by the refs. They couldn't regain composure enough to fight down the stretch, and the foul situation greatly affected sort of how they attacked and how they defended, and they couldn't get over it. They just emotionally couldn't get over it, and you saw it and you knew it, and it just looked like they wanted to be anywhere else but playing in that bronze medal game. And I don't really blame them. Like, I know fans and I know people would be, yeah, but it was still a medal. And yeah, you needed to be able to get over that. But I just go, it is such a human reaction to be heartbroken. And the bronze medal game, Colleen Jones, the great curler, my pal, always said the bronze medal game was always the hardest game to play because it meant you lost the semifinal and it meant you lost the chance to play for gold. And I really felt like that really rang true for the women's basketball team, that it was sort of like, we want to be in the gold medal or bust. But that was even compounded by the fact that the calls just didn't go their way. So it was it kind of fizzled, both those teams, I thought it would have been beautiful if they could have both came home with bronze and for the program, but a lot of disappointment there. And I know Katie Dandino will be processing that for a long time.
Okay. So now we're going to go with nothing but positives from here on out. I'm going to highlight that Canada claimed 10 gold, 9 silver, and 10 bronze, and it tied with Rio for 2016 with 29 medals. So you were there on the ground. What are some of your highlights of the wins that Canada had?
Well, first of all the wins, because I think a lot of people were sort of going, what is going on with Canada's Paralympic movement at the Summer Games, right? I mean, you go back to the Chantal Petitclerc Games and the glory days where Canada was just kicking ass and taking names. But we know that the rest of the world has not only caught up, but their para programs have just excelled, right? So I think those days of winning like 50, 60 medals at a Paralympics, those days are over. But I think people wanted to see some improvement. We saw that. We know that they won money for medals for the first time ever. I think about my interviews actually with the athletes as being sort of the bright spot for me, because in victory and defeat, I think of Katarina Roxon, who, I don't know if you guys saw my interview with her, but it was beautiful. Like, it was just, she's like, it wasn't what I wanted it to be, but I'm so proud to be here. And it was all the things you could hope for in an interview. I think of Jacob Wasserman competing and his family being there to compete and what he represents. I think about Jesse Zezu, who sobbed after he won his first Paralympic medal and talked about it being the same week that his family immigrated to Canada. To me, what was beautiful is that all of these stories make up the best of Canada, and that was what was most impressive to me. Is my heart was just so full, and then to see the way the Canadians rallied, I mean, the numbers were massive. I mean, if you looked at the viewership, and, it's like astronomical percentages, like 153% more and 400% more viewers. I'm like, oh my Lord, like, people were eating it up. And I just love what that meant. And I love that Canadians embraced our team. So, but it wasn't just about those medals. It was about the stories and the humanity. And I really feel like this was a turning point in our sport culture in this country. I want to believe that. And I've heard from people that they feel the same way, that the medals are nice because it brings people in who just care about winning. But it was also about the way our athletes carried themselves in victory and defeat that made people just fall in love with our athletes. And I think in doing so, our athletes reminded us of the way we want to be in our own lives. And that is what will stick with me from this experience. I'm a changed person after this summer. My life and the way I view life is different from the way the athletes showed up. And that's a blessing of my job and the blessing of the athletes being as vulnerable as they are. I learned so much, and I hope that a lot of people learned from them as well. So.
Much has been made going into this Paralympics about the generous donation that was made to allow Paralympians to earn money for medals. And we did see over $500,000 claimed by Canadians in their medal earnings. What do you think that will do for the Paralympic movement going forward?
I think the final number, and I'm bad at math, was 535,000. I think that was a total. And of course, we should remember that every medalist from the women's sitting volleyball team also gets that money, which is nice. And, Karen O'Neill, the CPC president, CEO, said to me, I've never been more happy to write a check. And this is coming from somebody that probably has been counting money over the years. Yeah, I was going to say pennies. Thanks for saying it for me, Josh. We should mention Sanjay Malavia, who, of course, allowed this to get across the line. And he was there. I never saw him. We tried about 7 different times, and it never happened because that's what happens at a games. And he said he was so moved by all of that things. Here's the thing. This is going to prolong careers. It really is. Not only is it going to give their a level of incentive to go another cycle to potentially cash in again, but for those who did win, if you won 3 or 4 medals and you're getting $50,000, $60,000, that changes how much you're able to train, where you're able to go to train, and where you're able to go to compete. That's not an exaggeration. And so the fact that we have this is a wonderful thing. And yet I'm really, really, really interested about how the corporate world can follow that lead, because it takes all of us. And I sometimes get a little heated and I have to put my phone down because I want to be a keyboard warrior in the middle of the games. But really and truly, it takes all media, it takes all corporate partners and sponsors, and it takes people in their own communities to make this a priority. Guys, when I got off the plane from Paris, as an exercise, and I had a lot of luggage, as you can imagine, because you saw all my wardrobes, and I was there for 2 months.
They were phenomenal, I must say.
Thank you. But I had a lot of bags, and I walked home with all of my luggage from Union Station to the distillery district, with wheels, to see what it was like to be on the streets of Toronto after the Paralympics, because we talk about what it's like to move around a city. And listen, there were a lot of conversations about the cobblestone streets in Paris, because that was a city not meant to be accessible. It was built at a time when they weren't thinking about wheelchairs. But the games have put a spotlight on it, and kudos to them. They're reimagining their metro system and the way people move around. I'm telling you right now, I had to walk in the middle of streets at times from Pearson to the distillery district to get my luggage home. And it made me go, doth protest too much? And what holier than thou people we are in this country to think that we've got this all figured out. All of that to say, within our own communities and within our own places of this country, we need to be thinking about day in and day out how to become more accessible, how to create more pathways to parasport. And I don't think we talk about that enough. I really don't. And I think there needs to be, at the grassroots level, better pathways to parasport. I mean, I can't tell you how many Paralympians I've interviewed over the years where they tell me it was because of a chance meeting at a grocery store in the produce section that they went and tried out for one of these events. You know what I'm saying? So that's not sustainable. It's wonderful that we have money for medals, but I think there's probably like an undertone to it of like, that's great, but it's not enough. And I would challenge all mainstream media, because there wasn't enough there in Paris. I would challenge all corporate partners. CBC still has a way to go, but why are we able to broadcast 23 hours a day during the Olympics? Because Toyota and Petro and all of these other places are sponsoring these shows. money talks. If you're going to sponsor the Olympics, you're sponsoring the Paralympians and Paralympic broadcasting equally. Like, full stop.
No disagreement from me. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing for me, right? Because we're doing it, and the numbers are better than ever, and there's a lot of patting ourselves on the back. But like, we're also doing our jobs. The Paralympics are not anything other than the highest level of sport. Like, we're doing our jobs, and all of it should be able to be viewed.
And with the viewership numbers being up, you would think that hopefully the corporate world would recognize that, because then there's more eyes and they can spend their money there and hopefully get more business. Because that's been I think one of the reasons why people haven't sponsored parasports is because there's not enough eyes watching it. Well, it's starting to show now, because of all of the different streaming opportunities, that there are a lot of eyes watching this now. So let's go.
Well, and great point, Cam. I'm also going to say this, and it might be controversial, but I don't really care. Okay. I don't think you guys know me well enough. The U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee is one now. What I would like to delve into is, if you're a sponsor of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, how is that money shared? Because in Canada, you're the Canadian Olympic Committee and Canadian Paralympic Committee. I can only imagine that both have self-interest at the forefront. And if you're fighting for an already jammed sponsorship space and fighting for those dollars, who's getting them?
Yeah, it's a very good point.
Like really, why should that be split? So it's just, I think we got to think about that, and I think we got to think about holistically what sport means to us in the country, and we should be looking perhaps at the highest level to sort of take those cues. And I still think there's just too many fragments in the funding model and the resource model that just, I don't think we're as great as we can be because of it.
One last question from us, because we want to be respectful of your time and, of course, our own. We know that you've been in Paris now for a couple of months and you're nicely home after a bit of a break. But what is next for Devin?
Okay, well, I didn't get a lot of time off, and I didn't want a lot of time off because it's the fall and winter season, and somewhere I can hear a granite rock sliding over pebbled ice. And so there will be a lot of curling content, so buckle up for that. But I'm also working on a few features in the background that I can't specifically talk about just yet, but that will come to light. Of course, we have a swimming world championship in Budapest that it's looking likely that I'll be at, because every time Summer McIntosh is in the pool, she does something extraordinary. So it's going to be a lot of travel as usual. It's going to be a lot of story. And we're a year and a half away from the next games. Wow. So like when you really think about it, like, this is our last winter season to speak to our Olympians and Paralympians before Milano 2026. I know it's a little crazy. Yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day about this cramped international schedule. You know, and I'm actually traveling to London, Ontario tomorrow to do a sit-down exclusive with Maggie McNeil as she announces her retirement. And it's problematic, guys. Like, we've reached a critical mass of all these international events, and if you want to be seen as a good Team Canada member, you go. But like, it's not just going up and competing there. It's the 10 days before. It's the training and the anxiety and the pressure of all of that. So as a teaser, you know, Maggie told me that after she won her Olympic gold in Tokyo, it wasn't long after that Swimming Canada official said, like, when I say not long after, I'm talking the day of. where they said, okay, and now the path to Paris begins. We just aren't letting our athletes celebrate the accomplishments of sport enough. And Maggie had her best results during the pandemic. Well, guess what? She wasn't running around the world competing. She wasn't killing herself training in a pool. She was in her backyard swimming laps in her backyard family pool, and she became the Olympic champion, and she was the fastest she's ever been. All of that to say, I think we need to think about, for Paralympians and Olympians, what they're enduring, what they're putting themselves through mentally and physically in the pursuit of success. I don't think they need to push themselves as hard as they do. In fact, I would say if they took a step back a little bit, they'd love the sport more, they'd have better results, and everybody would be happier.
That's good insight.
Devin, today especially, but all through this period of time for the Olympics and Paralympic Games, you have given us a copious amounts of time, and we greatly appreciate it. You and I got to meet at the swimming trials in Toronto, which was really great.
So much
we would like to have you on to talk about, curling or swimming or, swimming world championships. We are going to give you a break because you've given us lots of time. So thank you very much for all your time over the last year and a half to 2 years as we get prepped for this. Congratulations on your award. So grateful for you, and we appreciate all the time you give us. So thank you so very much.
Always here for you guys. Can't wait for the winter season. So we'll maybe December we can circle back.
Ladies and gentlemen, when Devin says always here, he never turns down an interview request from the one and only Cam Jenkins. So we will be hearing from Devin, but after 52 minutes plus, we need to let Devin go. So Devin, thank you so much as we do this yet again.
The Neutral Zone is sponsored by the Ontario Para Network. Their focus on the growth and development of wheelchair basketball, tennis, and rugby in Ontario.
So as we discussed earlier on in the program about the fact that Vince Carter is going to get his number honored and retired by the Toronto Raptors on November the 2nd, when the team takes on the Sacramento Kings in Toronto. Your reaction to this, first of all, is it deserving? Why or why not? Start with you on this one, Cameron.
I think enough years have passed where most Raptor fans would be happy for Vince getting his number retired to the Raptors. I think that everyone's going to point out how much of a dramatic ending it was for Vince leaving, and he gave up on the franchise. But if you look at it, his whole body of work, he really did put the Raptors on the map when it came to the Toronto Raptors and the NBA. We never had a player like Vince before. And the closest probably would have been Damon Stoudemire. However, I think Vince was in a different tier than Damon Stoudemire. And I think he does have his... I really honestly feel that he deserves to have his numbers in the rafters.
I totally agree with you, Cameron. The cachet that Vince brought to the Raptors, I think, can't be understated. I think people kind of thought of Canada in general as a bit of a basketball backwater. But then once they got Vince here, saw what he could do, saw him in that famous dunk competition, and just saw the level of skill and talent that he brought to that team, I think he's very deserving of the honor. I know there's talk that it could have been Kyle Lowry or who knows who, but Vince was really the first, and Vince was really the one that helped grow basketball here in Canada. So I see no reason why it shouldn't be him, and I'm glad that, pettiness or hurt feelings or whatever the case may be didn't end up playing a factor. I'm a little disappointed that the news or the decision came out after it was announced that the Brooklyn Nets are also retiring his number, because I feel like maybe they got rushed into this decision. But ultimately, I think it is the right decision in the end.
I think that exactly what you just pointed out, Josh, in that, yeah, you could make the argument, and I'm going to ask a very specific question in a couple of minutes. You could make the argument that Kyle will also be up there, but I think if you made that decision and said we're gonna put Kyle first, there would be a part of the population that would probably say, yeah, well, he's deserving as well because of what he brought to the organization and championship, so on and so forth. But I think if you put him up there first, then you are basically pushing aside the history that Vince did for the city of Toronto, for basketball in Canada. And yes, his big claim to fame was the win of the slam dunk contest, but I do think it goes a bit further than that in what he brought to the city, and he was sort of the first big name that came to Toronto and you know, put them on the map. So for me, I think the right decision was made. I agree with you, Josh. I think the Brooklyn Nets doing what they did, I get it, but it's just kind of like, why did we have to do this so close together? It just kind of felt weird a little bit to me as well. So here comes the $1 million question. Is Kyle the automatic next one to be retired? Josh, start with you on this one.
I think he has to be, because I think he has meant more to the organization than, say, insert any other player here. I think he means more than DeMar DeRozan. I think he means more than Tracy McGrady or Damon Stoudemire, any of those previous players. So I've heard some say, why don't we retire Kawhi's number? And it's like, Kawhi was here for one season. Let's be realistic. I understand he had probably one of the biggest shots, but you don't retire somebody's number because of one playoff run. So by virtue of that, I think you put Kyle up there. We can debate whether you put DeMar up there when his career is done. We can debate whether you put Damon Stoudemire up there or any of the other.
Chris Bosh.
You could talk about Del Curry. You could talk about some of the other big names that have been here when the franchise first started. But I really think when you talk Toronto Raptors, you think Vince, you think Kyle Lowry, you think DeMar DeRozan. And some people, because of the playoff run, think Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, Kyle is the automatic next one, guaranteed 100%. I think he deserves it. He always showed a lot of grit. He never backed down. He was a good point guard. He had all the qualities of a championship caliber player, and he helped us get to the promised land along with the other players on the team. So I think he's definitely the next one. After that, DeMar's going to get up there eventually because he loved the Raptors and he did a lot for the Raptors, even though he wasn't there for the championship run. So I really feel that he's going to be able to get up there as well. Damon probably, because he was like the first Raptor and the first really good Raptor that they had. So I really feel that he's going to be up there too. And then after that, if they wanted to put Kawhi Leonard up there, why not? Because he's the one that really helped get us to the promised land and get an NBA Finals. Without him, I don't think they would have had a sniff at it. So, you know what? I'm in a good mood today. Why don't you give one to Kawhi Leonard eventually? But you got to give those others their due first before you think about Kawhi, in my
I guess
opinion.
I'm not in a good mood today because I would not.
Come on, with that island shirt you got on with the sun shining, why aren't you in a good mood?
Listen, I love what Kawhi did, and I know, Cameron, you're going to argue with me, and that's fine. We have tons of time today. But Kawhi Leonard did not want to be a Toronto Raptor. He was forced to be here. He came from the San Antonio Spurs. He came in a trade. He didn't want to be here, didn't stay. Yes, he got the championship. Yes, got the good shot, which I have on my wall behind me. I get all that and I respect it. But absolutely, unequivocally, no thank you. Thank you for the championship. If you want to do in 10 years, like this was the team that did it 10 years ago or 25 years ago or whatever, and you want to do a ceremony then, sure, have at it. But retire his number, no thanks.
You got to retire his number. Because he's the one that brought us to the promised land. He's the one that did the shots. He is the one that did so well in the playoffs. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have had a sniff at the playoffs.
I can see both of your opinions on this.
Of course you can, Josh. Pick a side, for God's sakes.
I'm about to. Give me a chance. Jeez. What I was about to say before I was so rudely interrupted was that I can see both sides, but I do tend to fall on Brock's side of things with this, simply because it was one season. He did not want to come. When he was given the opportunity to stay, he chose not to stay. He chose to go to the Clippers.
Yeah, where he lives.
Where has that gotten him?
That's where he lives.
I understand that's where he.
That's his family.
That's where he lives. I understand that, but I just don't see. I see thanking him, congratulating him, honoring him for what he did for the franchise, but not retiring Kawhi's number. That's one step too far for me. But by all means, if we want to commemorate the shot somehow,
and I also want to say.
Make a statue.
I'm not make a statue. Get out of here with a statue. Good Lord. Well, maybe
with the shot.
If you want to make a statue with the shot, maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe with the shot. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. For the 10 or 20 year anniversary when they've only won one championship in that time frame, sure. Let's commemorate it.
I'm disappointed that you don't think they're going to win more championships, Brock.
I was gonna say, are we gonna be the Blue Jays here? Come on.
Yeah. No, I maybe I am doom and gloom today, and that's why my lovely attendant put on this nice shirt of mine to try to brighten my spirits up today.
Maybe she's trying to brighten you up a bit.
Next, you're going to tell me the Leafs aren't going to win the Stanley Cup until 2067.
I'll be dead before they win a cup, but we will get there today. I maybe we will get there today in a little bit of time.
Dead.
But
jeez.
Go on, Mr. Happy. What are you going to say?
Let me ask you this question, because our colleague friend of our program, and she put this in our chat group, that the cheapest ticket for this night on November the 2nd was $150. So I ask you, if not for this ceremony, would there be any ceremony that you would spend money, and you can name the amount, to go and see and watch, and what would it be if not this ceremony? Josh, start with you on this one.
Oh, goodness. Is there a ceremony I would go to watch? You know what? It's really hard for me to justify spending that kind of money on any ceremony that I can probably watch better on television, to be quite honest with you, because we have all experienced accessible seating at venues. We all know that the minute the crowd in front of us stands up, we lose all vision of what's going on. So I'd rather take it in from my couch, to be quite honest with you. I will admit to you the atmosphere involved would be something to enjoy. I certainly felt that with the Raptors' run to the NBA playoff. Brett Wills and I sat and watched a couple of games at different establishments in order to take in some of the ambiance, including sitting outside on a frigid June night for whatever reason. It was like Mother Nature forgot what day of the year it was. And that was something. But to sit there and say, I'm going to drop 150 or 200 or 250, I think would be very hard. Now, if we can talk historically, maybe I would put money down to see Gretzky's retirement or one of the great hockey players, because those were people that I watched more. I'm not a big basketball guy. So do I think he's deserving of the honor? Of course. But would I shell out that kind of money for Vince's retirement? No.
No, I'm old. I like my couch. I like my beverage. I like my screen, however small or big it is, and watch it in, what is it these days, 4K that they got going on? Are they up to 5K with Rogers? I don't know. They're up to something. So I'd much rather watch it on there and and relax in my home rather than having to deal with the crowds and taking TTC and like traffic and $10, $15 beers, whatever it is. Like, forget it. I'm watching it at home on my nice TV and invite a few friends over, and that's good enough for me these days.
If I was going to shell out that kind of money, there better be like one of those, commemorative cups of Vince Carter's, retirement or whatever. And I recognize that I'm going to pay $15 for a pop if I'm getting that, and probably close to $20 for a beer if you're getting a commemorative cup. I get all that. But if you're going to shell out the money, I want something to remember it by, because I'm not as old as these two gentlemen on the panel, but I will tell you the thing that bothers me the most when you go to events is you don't have the physical tickets anymore of like, oh, I was here and I did this and I did that. And that's the thing that I used to say, okay, if I'm going to my first Leaf game when I was 12 years old, I still have that ticket that I have. Now you don't have them as much anymore because everything's gone digital. So I want something to commemorate it. Would I spend $150? Absolutely not on your life. Where I would be sitting for that $150, I'm not seeing nothing. I'm watching it on the Jumbotron in the arena anyway, so at that point I might as well watch it at home and watch it on my bigger television and be fine. Now, the one ceremony that I would have gone to, and I was 9 when this happened, but I remember this very vividly, is exactly what Josh said. The Wayne Gretzky, the retirement when he was on the truck and he was going around the truck and they were doing the whole wave thing with Wayne Gretzky. I believe he was with, was it the New York Rangers guys when he retired finally? Like when he said, yeah, that's what I thought. That I would,
because he went to the Blues and then the Rangers.
That's something I would have paid money to watch, and it's something that even as an 8-9-year-old I still remember to this day and can sit there and think, yeah, I remember, the crying afterwards, like with the press conference. I remember all that, and so for me that would be where I would go, and I kind of wish I would be able to fast forward my age a couple more years if I could have, just to be able to, take it in more, because the thing that sticks in my mind is the Raptors parade when it was on for like 8 hours commercial free on different channels and the bus couldn't get through. Like, those are the kind of things that I like and I remember about it. But would I shell out $150? No, I wouldn't. Did you guys even ever consider going to the parade, like when we did that? Either of you?
God, no. God, no.
Oh, God, no. I'll watch it on TV.
I don't like crowds.
All those people. I don't like people.
Crowds that size, I get trampled, and I'm not a small man.
No, one thing I did miss, though, was what I did pay for is I was in Ottawa one time visiting my sister, and the World Junior Championships were on for hockey. And I paid to go sit up in the very highest seat that the Canadian Tire Center, whatever it was called back in those days, Corel Center, and watched Russia against Canada. And I believe Ovechkin was at that one. And I believe that's when, oh, my memory escapes
Jordan
me.
Eberle?
But he used to play with.
Are you thinking Jordan Eberle? With Doug Gwen? Yeah.
Yes. I was at that game, the Jordan Eberle goal. Man, I've never seen a crowd so electric in my life. That was a phenomenal game to go to. So I probably would go to a Team Canada game again, whether it be men's or women's, especially if it's in the medal round. Man, what a rush that was. So I probably would pay for that and take my grumpy old Cam attitude and go to the rink for that one.
I remember even being at home for the Jordan Eberle goal. And, it was a tradition when I was living at home with my family to watch all of the junior games. And every time Canada would play, you'd turn the TV on and you do this. And I remember my dad, it was like 6 seconds left on the clock, something like that. And he scored. And my dad, I've never seen my dad get air under his feet. Love you, Pops, but I've never seen him get air under his feet, and that's one of the moments that I saw it. I did see it in a picture that he was recently in Paris, and he jumped below the Eiffel Tower. So I have seen him lift off, but not in person again since that Jordan Eberle goal. And another one of my favorite moments of just being on TV, and this is not like a favorite moment episode, but since we're on the topic, was that Jose Bautista, bat flip. Like, you could literally see on TV, you could see things shake. Like, it was incredible. And, those moments are things that you won't forget, but you can also feel the moment on television as long as it's done right and shown properly. I was at the World Juniors in 2011 when it was in Buffalo, and they were leading 3-0 against Russia, and they blew that. And I was all excited to watch them win a championship. And we'd been there for all the games, all the playoffs, and then they blew it against the Russians. So I've been there for the pain too. And sometimes that's harder because then you got to witness a team, getting their medal, and Canada's so dejected, which is hard to watch as well. So lots of good moments, but I think we're on a consensus. No, $150 to see Vince Carter get his number raised, not for me. But it is something, and I think we all agree it is something that we're gonna all watch on in the early part of November there, as it's something that will be historic for Canada and basketball and the Raptors as well. Anything else on this topic, or should we move on?
Move on.
All right. Speaking of historic, and this has been on our script for a couple of weeks, and we just got chatting about other things and didn't quite make it. But recently, we learned that Bell would be selling their shares of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment in the amount of, wait for it, $4.87 billion to Rogers. Your reaction to this news before we dissect it is what, Cameron?
That is a lot of money, is my first reaction. I guess my second reaction is it doesn't really surprise me. I figured that one of them would end up taking the majority ownership eventually. And it doesn't surprise me that it's Rogers, because they have the Blue Jays as well. And I think they really want to go the sporting route when it comes to their portfolio. So doesn't really surprise me at all that Rogers was the one to take it. And I think within a couple of years, they'll end up buying out the shares of the other 20%. As well, because they have the option in 2026 to buy those shares. So I think they'll do that. And with that, they will be the absolute majority owner and making decisions on every sport that there is in Ontario.
Yahoo.
or at least Toronto.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me in the least. I believe Bell Canada is still in some way, shape, or form a crown company. In other words, ties to the government. So it makes sense to me that they wouldn't be the ones to buy up all the shares and own the teams. Rogers has really marketed itself and built itself into a media and entertainment conglomerate, shall we say. I am a little bit scared, and I won't go into it too much in this particular area in case I'm ruining one of Brock's further questions, but I am a little bit nervous about what that means for the competitiveness of each of the teams, because what I can't stand is when a corporate owner takes control of a team and figures, well, the seats are full, so who cares what the product is. That will cause me to change my fandom if I see that happening.
And how is that any different than the past since 1967 with the Leafs?
Well, it isn't, and that's the problem. I don't want to see the Jays, the Raptors, the Argos, and the Leafs all just be mediocre forever and ever. Amen. That's
Yep, I don't either.
That's not interesting to me. That's not exciting to me. If you're going to tell me that Rogers owning these clubs is going to make them more like a New York Yankees, where they're perpetually bringing in good players and striving for the top, then okay, have at it. But I think we all know. I think we all know better.
Well, I don't. Especially with the Jays, Ed Rogers has put in, what was it, $227 million this year towards the Jays.
Something like that.
And they sucked.
Mm-hmm.
They were the last in the American League East, but that's not Ed Rogers because he gave them all the money they needed.
That's true.
That's on the people drafting and picking the players to play for the team.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we have the correct managers, coaches, players being drafted and put in a place to succeed. So I think it's great to have one owner because then you only have one boss rather than all of these conglomerates that they've had over the years. And now, if something goes wrong, it's Ed Rogers' fault and only Eddie. So and that's what I'm going to call him from now.
Yeah,
Eddie.
I wish, because you sided with me earlier, but I have to side with Cameron on this one. I think one ownership will help the organization in that, exactly what Cameron just said. The buck literally stops at your feet, Mr. Rogers, and your neighborhood friends are going to be at you if you don't do things the right way. What I will ask you guys, though, is, and Cameron, I'll start with you because, as well known, you are a season ticket holder of this particular club. Do you see Rogers in your head wanting the Toronto Argonauts long term, or do you see them saying, let's put them somewhere else and we don't really want them under our umbrella? We know they're there now, we get it, but are they there long term?
That's a very good question, isn't it? I know Rogers didn't want them, and that's why Bell, I think they got them, and then I don't know how that all went down, but somehow they came under MLSE, but Rogers didn't really want them. I think they're a money-losing organization, but that can help the bottom line too, because sometimes with some of your companies, if you're losing money, then somehow that helps some of your other companies that you may have. I don't know business. I don't know how all that works, but I believe I've heard that before. Be nice if they could stay with MLSE, but if something's going to go first, I think it would be the Argos, because that's not really a money-making investment for MLSE, whereas all of the other ones, I think, potentially are.
Yeah, I don't know whether Rogers would ultimately keep the Argos or not. Um, I am concerned about that, in that the Argos are a historic franchise. They've been around, I believe it's at least 100 years. Feel free to correct me on that. But they've been around since the beginning of the CFL. I don't feel that there can be a CFL without a Toronto Argonauts in it. And if that means that someone else has to take them over, even if it's a provincial government, just to keep them afloat, then I think it has to happen, because it's a matter of culture.
Dougie Ford's not going to buy him. I can tell you that right now.
Well, he might be our only shot, because he was a football coach. So, yeah, I would be very sad to see the Argonauts go. And that's even as someone that loves football but doesn't even necessarily watch the CFL all that often. I've really tried in recent years to make more of an effort to watch through TSN, whether it's the Argos, the Ticats, any CFL match that's on.
Why would you watch the Tiger Cats, for God's
Because
sakes?
I worked in Burlington for a number of years and I didn't have a choice.
Oh, no excuse. You're in Toronto now.
I know.
I'd rather be an Argo than a Pussycat.
Well, that's fair. That is fair. We don't need to take that any further, but yeah.
I left some of that rhyme out, but that's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's
people that know.
There's a lot more to that, but yeah, I don't want to see the Argonauts disappear. I really don't. I don't want to see the CFL disappear, because I think it's Canadian. It's a cultural thing, and we can't lose that, because otherwise, how are we different than Americans?
Cameron, I
question, though, that we might lose I think we're going to lose the Toronto CFL team. I'll say it, because with Eddie now owning, it'll happen next year, but 75% of MLSE. What are the rules for an NFL owner to go into the club?
Yeah.
Does anyone know?
Not a clue.
Don't know.
To be an owner?
But I didn't.
Because I think before. Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say, the only thing I think I do recall is that I believe the NFL frowns on corporations owning teams. I think you have to be an individual. So Ed could get himself an NFL team on his own, but I don't believe Rogers can get a team.
Yeah. And that has some, trust funds and so on and so forth behind him. So I'm thinking that he's looking towards the NFL and wanting an NFL team. And that's one of the reasons why he did what he did to own all of MLSE.
So here's a question for both of you, and Josh, we'll start with you on this one. But we are this hockey season and next hockey season, Rogers owns all of the Canadian rights, with divvying up some regional stuff to TSN and its own self Sportsnet as well with the hockey. Does this deal with Rogers make it easier for them to continue with the rights of the NHL past next season?
For Rogers? I would say so, because they are the owner of a team. So it would be up to them to decide who gets the rights, I would say.
No, but I mean for the NHL, because they have to get the rights from the NHL, to get the full Canadian rights, whereas TSN will bid for it. Do you think now that Rogers has the majority, this makes it easier for Rogers to go to Gary and say, hey, we want to continue this partnership, and basically, for all intents and purposes, forget TSN, sort of, minus regional games?
I don't have anything to back this opinion up, but yes, I think it does make it easier, because they are the owner of the team.
Yeah, I don't think that it could. I think money matters, and that's all that Gary cares about. So if TSN ends up, once the Sportsnet deal is done, once the national deal is up, if TSN offers more money than Sportsnet, then TSN's going to get it. I don't think it cares to Gary if Sportsnet owns the team or Rogers owns the team. I don't think that matters to him. It matters just about cold hard cash and getting as much money as you can for a TV deal. And the thing is that the whole 20-year right thing, that's going to be interesting too, because what that means, from my understanding, is that TSN, say for regional games, is going to have to pay market value for those games. But you have the streamers coming in now. Like you have Amazon Prime, which are doing Monday night packages now. When the deal's up, who knows what they're going to be doing for regionals and so on and so forth. So you might see TSN and or Rogers kind of get, well, not Rogers, because they'll end up getting the regional games, I'm sure. But yeah, you're going to end up seeing, I don't know, some quite interesting things.
You're thinking that the rights could go to Amazon Prime or to
pick a streaming
Apple TV,
service.
which, tell me how much I love Friday night baseball on Apple TV.
But I think it could happen. So it's not necessarily a TSN Sportsnet world anymore, because the other streamers are coming in.
If that's the case, then Rogers better do what they've done with Disney Plus and include it in my package.
Yeah, I think with the way technology is, and I've been talking to a lot of the people that are around the business of media, I think what's going to happen is Rogers, in order not to have people cutting their cable package, is going to have to do something like, hey, we know all these streaming services are a thing, and it's gonna, sports is gonna be here. They're going to have to allow it to be so that you can click on Apple TV or what have you on your actual system in order to make it. Because I think what's happening now is that people are looking at their bills and going, well, I pay, this for that and this for that and this for that. I think we really need to get into a world, Josh, where it's all in one. And I know people are going to look and say, well, that's a lot for my bill, but at least you're not slicing the pie, say 4 or 5 different ways. I think we need to get into a world now with streaming services coming where it needs to be all in one sort of package.
I totally agree with you. I have used Disney Plus a whole lot more since it became part of my package, because now if there's a show that I want to see on, say, National Geographic, just as an example, I don't have to worry about, well, when is it airing on TV? I can go to my Disney Plus and say, oh, there's the show I want to watch. Oh, I'm on this episode, and I can click on it. But for me to actually sit there and pay for cable to get my sports, and then to pay for Disney Plus, and to pay for Crave, and to pay for Hulu and whatever else to see the shows I want to see when I want to see them, no thank you. That's what my PVR is for. So you want me to use a streaming service, included in the price you charge me per month. And you and the streaming services fight it out as to how much they get. That part I don't care about, but included in my package. Like, I would, as a Miami Dolphin fan, I would be ecstatic if there was a way for me to opt in to NFL Sunday Ticket and have $10 a month come off my bill. Because it's $300 a season. You telling me if you divide 300 over 12 months, it wouldn't be worth it for me? It probably would. But no, instead I have to pay $300 in one chunk if I want NFL Sunday Ticket, just so I can watch my Dolphins, who, like the night that we're recording this, are actually on Monday Night Football, so I wouldn't have to find a specialty channel to watch them on.
Not only that, but
in the NFL Sunday Night Ticket, or just the NFL Red Zone, I think it's called, that's different, because that isn't, like, I was watching that a bit over the weekend because I was interested in, watching some games or a specific game in particular, the Steelers, but it only shows like a bit of the game and then it goes to the next game, then it goes to the next game, and then it might go back to the Steelers.
Right. So NFL Red Zone shows you the exciting plays that are happening in each game. NFL Sunday Ticket is where you have, say, 12 channels or something. And so you could watch Steelers and whomever.
Any game you want. Okay.
Yeah.
But that costs $300.
That's $300 a season because I looked it up yesterday.
Yeah, I was going to say, oh, baby. And I paid for TSN Plus just because I've cut the cable cord and I'm doing things online. So I got Sportsnet and TSN.
Yep.
And that's like $200 a year each.
Yeah.
So whatever 200 divided by 12 is.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that is the issue. Like, I purchased NFL Sunday Ticket for another job that I had a couple of years ago, which I no longer have. But it's one of those things. It's like, for your job, yeah, you can write it off and say, I paid for this because of work. But then there's a point to which it's like, I can no longer, slice that because
this isn't worth it.
I mean, when I paid for it, and Josh, you and I must have had the same reaction 2 weeks separate from each other, because when I paid for it, it was $200 for the season, and I went to look the opening weekend, and I went, you want me to pay what for this? Like $300 for the season all at once? I don't think
no,
so.
Thank you.
I think we'll just, and listen, when I went into the Rogers store 2 seasons ago, and the guy saw my bill, he's like, I'm going to tell you something honestly that I probably shouldn't tell you, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. He says, I've never seen on somebody's bill that they're actually charged for the full season. If you call the customer service department, they'll push a few keys and they'll do this and that and get it for you less. I tried that this year and they told me flat out, they said, no, this package is specifically what it is because it used to be part of the Super Sports Pack, and then the NFL cried and said, we want our own package, and that's what happened, and here we are. But there's a lot of money to divvy up, especially I can handle it, guys, if it's per month, but when you're dropping $300 for that whole year, yeah, you're a one and done, but to get that one payment is a lot. So yeah,
and $300, that's for like 5 months, really.
Not even. It's 16 weeks.
Yeah, because
there you go.
All of the NFL playoffs, they're all on, God bless CTV and TSN and all, but they're all on the mainstream network. So you're only paying for it for the games that you want to watch. I mean, there's been times over the last couple of years where I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, this game's only on NFL Sunday Ticket, and it sucks, but I'm not willing to pay for it for the whole year. I mean, it's just, it's not worth it.
Well, and with all due respect, Brock, your favorite team being Buffalo, they're on mainstream cable every week.
Yeah.
Someone like me who chooses to cheer for the Dolphins, I grant you it's my choice, but I only get to see highlights unless they're on Thursday Night Football or Monday Night Football, or they happen to be playing the Jets or the Bills.
Unless you pay for the whole...
Unless I pay for a service.
Sunday Ticket.
You can do the time zone thing where it's like if you pay for a certain amount of money, you can get the CTVs from different time zones, which extends my games every week by about 4 comparative to the 3 that might be on the conventional. So instead of getting 3, I might have 6 or 7, versus the 3. But yeah, it's not worth it in the grand scheme of things. And Josh, to your exact point, the reason I'm a Bills fan is because growing up, that's all that was ever on my television. So it's like, well, I guess I'm a fan, and that's what I do. And I still kept my Super Sports Pack because I like hockey most out of all, and I like watching Edmonton and all the other Canadian teams because I'm set up for heartbreak in the Leafs land. But whatever. I just cannot afford to
Yep.
pay $300 in one season. Full stop. I can't do it.
So, Josh, how
Yes.
did you become a Miami Dolphins fan? Because you wouldn't have got like,
Nope.
especially back in the old days when, maybe there was one Buffalo game and that's it. Like,
Back in the day where I grew up, I usually had a choice of the Bills, maybe the Jets or Giants,
fair.
or Detroit.
Yeah, they sucked.
So, yeah, in the 80s and the 90s, Detroit was not a happening place for football, unfortunately. I knew a couple of diehard Lions fans, and I was like, God bless you. You're in a world of hurt. But, yeah, I did try to cheer for the Bills, and I was a Bills fan for a while. But I'm old enough to remember their Super Bowl runs where they got to back-to-back Super Bowls and they couldn't finish the deal. And I just said, you know what? Miami doesn't make it, but at least they don't choke. Like they either get there or they don't. None of this making me feel like, oh, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Oh, wide left. Oh.
To be a Bills fan in the early 90s.
Yeah, so God bless Steve Tasker for being on the broadcast now, but yeah, no thanks. I gave them my best, and the Jets weren't any better, the Lions weren't any better. So it was like, well, at least Dan Marino is a good quarterback, so maybe someday they'll actually win one. And they haven't, which is totally fine, but neither have the Bills. So there we go.
And then you get the whole, 3-0 start for Buffalo, and then we run up against Baltimore and we look terrible.
And we get exposed to what we really are. Exactly.
Here we are, set up for another year of pain. Only got a couple more minutes before we have to wrap the show. But speaking of pain, we're all Leafs fans around the table. Season's coming.
It's preseason, for God's sakes.
What's happening in the temperature of Leafland for us? Are we excited? Are we prepared? What's happening, Cameron? You tell us from your side.
I just said it. It's preseason. I don't care. It's preseason. They're getting their little skates in. They're practicing their moves. What they want to work on. They're working on their conditioning. Otherwise, it's all just like media.
7-minute power plays.
Like, who cares?
Can we keep Nick Robertson away from William Nylander, please?
How does that even hurt? Like, I don't know what he did that was so bad. You're just giving a little stick bump.
He gave Nylander a shove, presumably to get him moving faster, and Nylander fell and landed on somebody's knee. And
yeah, because he was doing a toe pick as if he was in like figure skating.
Oh boy, we have awakened to the beast.
What I was looking for though, Cameron, was like, I understand we're in preseason, but like, are you feeling any more optimistic, any less optimistic? Like, are we just buckling in for the ride?
I don't know. Wait for the regular season to start, and then let's see. Like, they seem to have a better defense. They seem to have better goalies. But it's all they seem. They seem.
Better goalies? I've only seen Matt Murray.
They've had other goalies in net. Stolarz has been in net. Wall's been in net.
Okay.
But Hildeby's also been in net. So it's like one goalie might only get a period and a half and they're out, and then the other one goes in. So, like, they're all just getting warmed up. It's preseason's way too long because that's when injuries happen too, and everyone's complaining about that. So, you know what? Like, defense seems to be in a good spot. Goalies seem to be in a good spot. The forwards
are who they are.
We'll see what happens.
Did you just say preseason's too long in hockey? Good God. Talk about baseball for preseason too long. Like, what?
Well, we're not talking about baseball. If you wanted to talk about baseball, you should have brought baseball into it. We're talking
Josh,
about
what
hockey.
were you going to say? Are you optimistic about the Leafs?
I was going to say I'm excited to see what a different defense core will do and what different goalies will do. But my ultimate feeling is that it's a very similar team, with the exception of the defense. So we'll see what happens. But I agree with Cam. It's too early to be panicking or anything like that. I'm encouraged. I will watch. I might watch more of the regular season now that we have presumably a better defense. But we'll just see how it goes.
We signed another Nylander, so now we won't know what Nylander they're talking about if they put them both on the ice. That'll be fun and exciting.
Well, they're brothers.
I'll have to call them Alex and William.
Exactly. Now put them on the same line and we'll really have trouble.
I would love to see that. It's I told you this was an extended edition of the Neutral Zone. It's been about an hour and 20-ish minutes by the time it's all going to be said and done. So that is the end of our program for this week. I would like to thank for the overtime today Josh Watson, Cam Jenkins. I'd also like to thank our wonderful and most talented technical producer in Canada, Ismar Kafalo. And stay tuned for next week because you just never know what happens when you enter the Neutral Zone. Be safe, be well.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.